Do not let the shirt deceive you. I am not a genius. But I do like Cardfight Vanguard, and as of recently, Nubatama has been hit pretty hard on the ban list. Not only did they get restricted with the crest in the premium format, they also lost 2 of their kill cards, 2 of their finisher cards. Now normally, this is something that most people or most players would see as just killing a clan, killing a deck, whatever you have. But today, I want to showcase to you guys what I can believe will be one of the potential decks that Nubatama can utilize, because with the crest restriction, some new decks can come out with it. So today, I want to showcase to you one of those decks that I have been cooking up a little bit that could be very interesting and fun. So without further ado, let us get into said deck. Today, we are going to be presenting to you Shiranui Oboro V version. There are about 3 Shiranui decks that I still believe can be showcased and utilized to varying degrees. All of them having their own different pros and cons, strengths, weaknesses. That means the same thing, whatever you want to say. But this first one is an interesting one that I want to bring you. First and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and cover the main grade 3 of the deck, Shiranui Oboro V version. This version, what it does, it will gain you a protect marker when you play it, but also act skill. Once per turn, you may discard 1 card to choose one of your opponent's rear guards or cards from drop, bind it, and you will gain something called a Mask of Domination token. This will be placed right behind the Vanguard. And when it attacks, it gains the skill of that unit that you bound with Shiranui's effect. Plus, if you have the total of 2 Shiranui units in Soul, this unit can perform drive checks, and your Shiranui Oboro gains 15,000 power. A very powerful card in its own right, and honestly, may actually be able to be a pseudo Gadatsu Rakan. Now when I say it's like Gadatsu Rakan, it's not very far off. Gadatsu Rakan, what he was able to do is, on Superior Stride, you're able to gain 2 protect markers and essentially dominate an opponent's rear guard while also having a 28k Vanguard attack. So let's compare and contrast the two. Gadatsu Rakan, when you would stride him, since it would be Shiranui Oboro you would have to stride a top on, you would be able to dominate an opponent's rear guard and have it gain 4,000 power and attack another unit. Mainly the Vanguard in most cases. And the way that Dominate was still alive in the V version of Vanguard would be the Mask of Domination token. Basically stealing your opponent's rear guard and using it as a unit to attack. Now it is a little bit different from Domination, so it's not going to gain any power from the crest. However, it is a little bit better than nothing. However, it's still not too far off, because on top of just getting 1 less protect marker, you still also gain the 15,000 power if you have 2 Shiranuis in Soul, which is not actually super difficult to pull off with some of the other cards we will have in the deck, and I will showcase in a bit. So on top of that, you will gain 15,000 power with the 2 Shiranuis in Soul, be able to drive check 1 card or potentially 2 cards if you bound a grade 3, which is not super common, but when it does come up, it is very satisfying, meaning that you will get a total of 3 drive checks or potentially even 4 drive checks, as well as being able to still have rear guards attack. So let's recap real quick. For the cost of discarding 1 card from hand, which you could basically consider the cost for stride, you will gain 1 protect marker, and if 2 Shiranuis are in Soul, plus 15,000 power and an additional drive check from the unit that you dominated or removed from play. Kind of like Gadatsu Rakan, only gaining just 1 less protect marker and a little less power, and that's it. That's why I keep saying that this is a pseudo Gadatsu Rakan, just in a form of a grade 3 from V. It's still a good card and makes a very powerful going first strategy. But odds are, if you're going first, you're not going to stay on top of him if you can help it to stride. Which brings me to our second grade 3 in the deck. We have 2 copies of Zanki in the deck to hopefully, after your drive checks or even after enough searching or drawing, you will have drawn into Zanki. So your first grade 3, if you're going first, will be Oboro, second grade 3 will be Zanki. At least that's how it's supposed to go. Sometimes you could brick, it happens in this game. But Zanki isn't in this deck just to make a second ride. While Shiranui Oboro V is your going first strategy, Zanki would be your going second strategy. And there's ways to search him out that I'm going to look for or show you in a bit. But what he does is, at the beginning of your ride phase, you may Soul Blast one card, have all players superior or call one card from their hand to the field without activating any auto abilities, I believe, of your opponent's Vanguards? Your opponent cannot activate auto abilities, so you could still activate on-place auto abilities as well, which is very fun to combo with. But also, when you ride him or even stride on top of him, you select one unit to gain plus 2,000 power, and if it's an opponent's unit, you dominate and have it attack specifically the Vanguard. No, just another unit. So you can give one of your units plus 2,000 power if they decide, oh, I don't want to call anything. And that is okay. It's a really good card and just a flat out upgrade over the original G Shiranui Oboro. And to be honest, the Zanki build is probably going to be the strongest build of all the Shiranui builds, but I'm still testing that out a bit. I am still playing around with it, and we're going to see where that goes. Now next up, the grade 3s that are next are, of course, the V version of the regular Shiranui. What this does is he has a protect marker. You can gain a protect if you ride him. However, since we are using the crest, odds are very good that you don't want to have to ride into him, because if you somehow brick and you don't have either of your other Shiranuis in hand, you are not going to be able to ride at all, and you can't even G-assist, which does happen, does really hurt when it does as well. So mainly he's here to go into the soul for the V version of Shiranui Oboro to get that to reach that mark of 2 Shiranuis in soul so that the skill can pop off. When this attacks the Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard with Shiranui in its card name, this card gains 10,000 power till end of turn. Then, at the end of that battle, put this unit into your soul, draw one card, choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and return it to hand. If a unit was returned, your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and discards it. A very good offensive play. To be honest, going first with Shiranui Oboro and having this regular Shiranui on field is just a good play regardless. Because with this attacks, goes to soul. It doesn't matter if you had another Shiranui or not in soul for the effect of that Mask of Domination token. It's still just a good thing to have because it nets you a card, has your opponent neg, and it also just is a big beat stick. So overall, a very solid card and very good to combo with Shiranui Oboro. After which, I do think that this has the potential to be the next finisher in the deck, and I am talking about Shura Stealth Dragon Fuzin Kongo. What Fuzin Kongo does, for those of you who do not know, if your damage zone has 5 cards, Soul Blast one grade 3 unit and bind any number of cards from your drop zone. He then gains 5,000 power for each card in your bind zone, and your opponent cannot call Sentinel cards to Guardian Circle. Or I'm sorry, your opponent can't call Sentinel cards from his or her hand. So they could still superior call them from the top few cards of their deck or even from their drop somehow. This game is a complicated game sometimes. But there is a way to make this effect pop off twice in a single turn and be a devastating attack, which we will get to in the strides. You probably already know where I'm going if you're experienced with Nubatama. But Fuzin Kongo is definitely a very dangerous card, and frankly, I'm considering running 2 of him if it weren't for the next card, which is going to be a bit of a flex slot. I am personally using Bracing Angel Ladder. However, I do think that Forbid Dull Circuit may be a bit of a better card into the current meta that may be coming up, depending. It depends if we're going into a Narukami meta or not, but if it's a Narukami meta, then of course Bracing Angel Ladder will be the better play. But if it's not going to be a Narukami meta, then Forbid Dull Surrogate will be the better play to just get out your Fuzin Kongo and Shiranui as well to be able to pull off your combos, because then you could just discard either of them for stride and superior call them off of Forbid Dull Surrogate. And that's just ignoring something like Virina to be able to add that to hand, which is also a very viable option that I have not used in this deck because space is quite tight, but it is still a very good option nonetheless. Another thing about Bracing Angel Ladder is I actually like to use it offensively, because I did mention some stuff about combos. However, I do use this just to put another grade 3 into Soul for Fuzin Kongo's ability, and I even did it for Mizukaze when he was not banned. But also, it just makes sure that no field disruption can keep your combos from going off, and you'll be able to just go on uninterrupted. But other than that, we are getting into the grade 2s, and I know that this is going to be something that people do disagree with, but I actually do use only 2 Furai and 3 copies of Yamashibuki. I like the versatility. One of the things that I do like about Nubatama the most is just the versatility that it does have. You want to use multi-attack? Then you can use the evil decoy tokens and Hanzo to be able to get out, what, 6 attacks in your first stride turn, maybe? One thing that I do like especially about Yamashibuki over Furai is that he provides a lot of early game pressure. Something that a lot of people seem to underestimate the most about Nubatama is the early game pressure that it can provide. In no small part thanks to both Yamashibuki and of course Shoujo Doji. And Shoujo Doji is actually one of the cards that makes it a little bit easier to get a grade 3 Shiranui to Soul, because he checks the top 5 cards of your deck to shove 1 stealth normal unit to Soul and superior call the other one to the rearguard circle. What you could end up happening is have just a random Shiranui, send it to Soul, and you superior call the Yamashibuki, so that way you can call something else out, have your front row units attack, the other unit will attack first, Yamashibuki will attack second, bounce the card that attacked first hand, and then Shoujo Doji will attack for a drive tech, and you will have a field of a Yamashibuki, 2 evil decoy tokens to intercept for defense, and a Vanguard that just performs a drive check. Your hand will be extremely healthy, and this could be very impressive. While Furai does also provide some more aggression of being able to just restand him when your Vanguard attacks and you dominated something, which is not very difficult when it comes to this deck. And yeah, okay. Sorry, I just finished the stream right now, so I'm very tired. I'm sorry if what I'm saying is kind of like all over the place or I'm stuttering a lot. I'm just very tired. Now, for the grade 2s, I understand if people want to take out either the Furai or the Yamashibuki, because the grade 2s are fairly hefty. You have a lot of grade 2s in this deck. Let's see, that's 6, 8, that's about 12 grade 2s. Well, it's kind of fair, I guess. But I understand if anybody wants to take those out in favor of a different strategy or changing the ratios. And of course, you have noticed that we have not displayed the Selengeki. This is basically the top 5 searcher for any grade 2 or lower unit, whether it's searching for your Shoujo Doji or even your Crest Getter, which I am having to adjust a bit. Having him in the deck makes your consistency a lot better than it would be otherwise if you didn't have him. Yes, when you draw into him and you can't exactly use him, he is a dead card, but up until then, or even every other situation that you can use him, he is incredibly useful. Whether that's getting a combo piece, or the Crest Getter, or even Shoujo Doji, he is incredibly useful. And outside of looking for the top 5 cards of your deck, he also has a very nifty skill of when he is boosted. If your opponent has 4 or more cards in their hand, they discard 1. No, just when he attacks while boosted, Soul Blast 1, if your opponent has 4 or more cards, your opponent discards a card from their hand, which is a very powerful skill that people seem to underestimate heavily. Again, the early game in this deck is insane sometimes. This could even be the other unit that you have attack that you then return to the hand with Yamashibuki. A really good card. Then of course we have Elementary Sanctitude, and then we have the card that is almost universally agreed to be bad. I forgot its name, I forgot all their names. Tobitachi. I believe that this card has a very niche and very important role in this deck. Let me tell you what it does first. First and foremost, if your opponent's Vanguard grade and your Vanguard's grade are the same grade, you may pay the cost for its skill with a Soul Blast instead of a Counter Blast. Well, what is that skill that you may ask? When placed, Counter Blast 1 and look at the top 7 cards of your deck for up to 1 Shiranui unit in its name and add it to your hand. You may then shuffle your deck afterwards. Now, that is all the cost. You don't discard 1, you don't then have to put anything back. No, you just flat out add it. However, if you whiff, then that's it. The cost remains paid and you can't get a refund. Unfortunate, however, it is very useful because it has another skill. During your turn, if you have a token unit, both this unit and all your token units gain 5,000 power. And the Mask of Domination token, as it just said in the name, is a token unit. So for example, let's say that you went first. You're going first strategy, you ride into Shiranui Oboro. And let's say that you somehow manage to get 2 Shiranui units into Seoul. You got the Mask of Domination token, and let's say 10,000 power. It's a grade 2 that you got rid of, and it's able to perform drive check, which can put pressure. However, if you have 1 Tobitachi, that will be a 15k body with a drive check. Well, what if you have another one? 20k body with the drive check. And then these are 13k boosters as well. So not only are you attacking the Vanguard with a unit that has 28k and 2 drive checks, you're attacking with a token that does a drive check, still can perform the skills of the unit you bound, and gains power potentially 5k each, so potentially 20k with a drive check if it's a grade 2. But what if you go second? Well, this is part of the going second strategy that I want to explain. Odds are you're going to be the same grade as your opponent because you are trailing right behind them when it comes to riding up. Well, your going second strategy is going to be, of course, Zanki, but you only have 2 copies of him in your deck. That's where the Tobitachi comes into play. This deck has an excess of cards in Seoul a lot of the time, so paying 1 or 2 of them to try and search out Zanki is actually not that bad. Am I coping? Yes, it is still not a great card. A lot of people would rather use the top 5 searcher because you don't have to pay a cost that you will never get back, and you only discard if you find something. But I just like the idea of being able to maintain hand while also adding something from the deck. I do like the idea, plus the power gain is very versatile. It's just a versatile card. Is it great? Not exactly. It only has a really good niche in this kind of specific build, and this build is very, very piece reliant, which is going to be probably the biggest thing holding this build back. But it's still an incredibly fun deck. And other than that, we do have another card that is actually not that bad to ride, but is usually used to tuck things into Seoul, including Shiranui units. You probably guessed it by now. I am talking, of course, about Unin. Yes, Unin. For those of you who do not know, its skill is when it is ridden upon by a grade 2 unit, you may Soul Blast 1 card to reveal a grade 3 in your hand. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 grade 3 with a different card name, add it to your hand, and put 1 card from your hand to the bottom of the deck. Now, this is really good when you're able to combo with something such as Shoujo Doji, because all you gotta do, reveal a grade 3, search your deck, and you can put the over trigger back into the deck if you got it. Plus, you still get to use the effect of Shoujo Doji to search the top 5 and just shuffle your deck so that over trigger isn't stuck at the bottom. The second skill is what you're gonna use a lot more often, of when it boosts a unit. You may shove that unit to the soul at the end of that battle and then return 2 cards from your field to your hand, including Unin himself. Again, the early game can be very devastating with this deck. And of course, we are going to get the star of the show, the 4 copies of Seizui. I'm waiting my 4th copy to come in, so just to pretend that's the 4th copy. Seizui is a very simple card, but was very expensive up until recently. Actually, I don't know the pricing right now, but I know he had to have gone down in value. What he does is when he rides upon Stealth Dragon Modai, basically Shiranui Oboro crest, and the crest is a very dangerous, scary thing. But let's say you don't really draw it when you need it, well, you could just use it as discard fodder. As simple as it is, as that's kind of all it boils down to. It could just be discard fodder. It's kind of simple. And of course, the one, your starter Vanguard, Stealth Dragon Modai. Other than that, you get the 1 very shiny Overtrigger Dragon Empire. You cannot use any other Overtrigger in this deck. If you do, you will be banned for life from Bushiroad events. That's not true. I'm just joking around. Do not sue me. We also have 3 perfect draws. A playset of Stealth Dragon Aizen to help with the strides. A playset of Noroi. I have the originals, thankfully, most of them. Yeah, they're all originals, so okay, that's cool. Where when it's damage checked, you may then draw a card, and, well, that's always nice. It also has the ability or skill of when your Vanguard attacks, if you have Shiranui in the card name, you may shove him to the soul, give that Vanguard plus 5,000 power, and draw a card. Very versatile, very nice. And then lastly, we have the heal triggers. We have 3 copies of the grade 3 heal, and then 1 copy of, darn it, Basara. There we go. I have considered swapping one of the other copies to a copy of Basara, just to be able to countercharge a lot more because you do use a lot of counterblast in this deck. Soul, you could sometimes soul charge instead if you wish, but I find myself counterblasting a lot more than I do soul blasting. So yeah, that is something, of course, to be wary of. There's definitely a lot that you could do with this deck, and that's just the main deck. There is some space to change things if you want to change things, but I do want to move on to the G Zone. That's right, the G Zone, what the deck is built around. You, of course, will have to have your 4 evil decoy tokens, but that's whatever. Now, for the G Zone, we have Shiranui Mukuro, and we have 2 copies of, and this is probably going to be a bit of a hot take, Jagumesu, the thing that actually enables you to use Fusen Kongo's skill twice in 1 turn. But I will go over that in just a bit. If you don't know what Mukuro does by now, I just completely jumped over that. Soul Blast 1 and discard 1, dominate your opponent's Vanguard and have it attack all of their rearguard units. You then also perform drive checks for that unit's attacks. What Jagumesu does, when it attacks, you may retire 2 grade 0 units to return all of your rearguards to your hand. You may then draw 2 cards and superior call up to 2 units from your hand to rearguard circle. If you call 2, then Jagumesu gains plus 10,000 power and a critical. Very scary, very dangerous, helps you to draw, and a very good card overall in general. We of course also have Shiranui Rine. What this does, counterblast 1, flip a copy of him face up in the G Zone. Your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand, calls them to rearguard circle, they gain 5,000 power, and they attack the Vanguard. It also has a Generation Break 3 ability of giving all dominated units plus 10,000 power and plus 1 critical, which is very scary when you combine that with the crest. I do also run 2 of Mugen Lord, though I do really think I'm going to swap one of these out for the Crate Elemental unit that gives all units without auto abilities, basically all units without abilities at all, plus 5,000 power, because the crest makes it so that all dominated units lose all of their abilities. So that will just be a nice little boost. But this is also nice to when you go up against decks that just like to fill their field and have a bunch of rear guards so they can bash it out and really attack you. So that's why I do really like that. I do feel like using the version of him that does dominate from the G Zone instead, because those are just gonna be big beefy boys. They really are. Big beefy boys. We do run 1 copy of the Generation Break 8, where Generation Break 8, when your opponent would call a card from hand to Guardian Circle, Counterblast 1 or Soul Blast 1, and your opponent discards 2 cards, basically making it a 3 guard. Oh no, this might be the one I end up swapping out. I don't know. I do like to use him for the draw, and I did like to use him to kind of make my opponent scared that they would end up having to deal with a with a scary guard restrict in the name of this card and the shape of this card. And it is a very scary combination, but now that he's gone, Mizukaze, then he's kind of null and void. We do run 1 copy of Gaharakan, Zashikahime, and 2 copies of Mora Lord. And of course, the 1 copy of Harmonix Messiah. I forget its main skill. I will put the errated skill on the screen right here, but you mainly have him in the deck so that way you could get the Guardian Shield ticket for a lot of the times. That's the main reason you have him in the deck. So that is the G Zone. Now I want to go ahead and explain a little bit of what he will do. So a lot of the times I will find myself in the past using my Jagumesu as my first stride to help me get to Generation Break 2, so that way I can then do the following turn as Rine, but also just to draw cards. He can be very scary offensively, and allows you to actually use Fusen Kongo's ability twice in 1 turn. So, for example, let's go ahead and say you have 2 random grade 3s in Soul. Fusen Kongo will attack the Vanguard, and you will have to Soul Blast 1, and then bind, let's say, 15 cards are in your drop zone at that point. You bind all 15, he will gain 5k for each, making it a total of 75,000 power plus 12. So that's 87,000 power. I did the math wrong, didn't I? No, I did it right. So that's 87,000 power and a guard restrict on top of his attack. Well, you have Yamashibuki on the other side, let's say. Yamashibuki will attack, counterblast 1, return Fusen Kongo to hand, and you'll gain 2 evil decoy tokens, attacking for a 19k body. Next up, Jakumesa will attack, you'll get rid of those 2 evil decoy tokens, return this to hand, draw 2, and you will call them back out, being able to get the drive checks and giving all critical to your Fusen Kongo, who will then attack, Soul Blast 1, and basically have pretty much very likely over 100k single attack with a guard restrict on it, making this for not only a beefy Vanguard swing, but also a rear guard that can attack twice and has a guard restrict on both attacks while reaching nearly 100k and well over 100k on both of those attacks. This card is the singular reason why I decided I would put 2 of Jakumesu in this deck. It is just so satisfying to pull off. However, there are a few problems with this combo and overall just a few problems with this deck in general. First and foremost, it is very piece reliant. This deck and this combo specifically are piece reliant. You need to have things line up precisely. If you don't have the 2 grade 3s in soul by the time he attacks, you're kind of all out of luck, SOL. But that's only just for his attack. If you don't have the 2 grade 3s in soul for Shiranui Oboro's skill, then you're not going to be able to use his ability to gain the power or even have that unit you dominated gain the drive check either. It is a very piece reliant deck. However, it is a lot of fun and very satisfying when you can pull it off. It can be a very, very oppressive deck when it works, and it does work very well when it does. This build actually has so much potential, it's kind of scary and makes me want to figure out ways to make it even stronger and better. So if you have any thoughts or ideas or opinions that could help improve this deck, go ahead and let me know. There's a lot of room to build this deck. For example, the G-Zone itself, there's a lot of things you could change with the G-Zone. I would highly recommend picking up the Cray Elemental unit. I'm going to put a picture right here on screen. I would highly recommend picking that up to help make those dominated units even stronger, because when it comes to the crest, it basically makes any dominated unit lose all of their abilities, so it makes those attacks even scarier, giving them 5k on top of the power they gain from here and Shiranui Zanki. They become very dangerous and very, very scary. If you want to change the grade 2 ratios around as well, you could go ahead and either swap out Furai for the Virina unit, the Virina grade 4, or you can even take out that and remove the 2 copies of your Jakumesu to have a bit more room to mess around with the build a little bit. Because one of the biggest issues that I have kept stating is that this is a very piece-reliant build. Maybe add some consistency pieces. You could even add the top 5 searcher grade 1 unit, so that way you're a little bit more consistent in getting your grade 3s. All very viable options, all very good, and really, honestly, could be a lot of fun to just test out. I would say a unit to take out would be, of course, the Mugen Lord, and the first one you're going to end up taking out is this guy a lot of the times. He doesn't add as much as you would hope, and it gives a little bit too much power to your opponent on what they want to do. So he could be good, but I would say you probably just want to add the version of Mugen Lord that dominates G units instead and take him out. But that, honestly, I think that's going to be it. That's going to be what I'm going to be making changes to with this build. And that's going to be the end of that. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. I do want to make some other videos about the other Shiranui builds that I've been wanting to play around with, because just looking at them and thinking about it, the advantages that this deck has, while it is very versatile, it is also very piece reliant. Whereas the Zanki build, I believe, will be potentially the strongest late game build, but I don't know, it could have its own little complications that I need to really consider. The Crest Oboro build is definitely the most versatile of the 3 builds, and one of the biggest things about that when it comes to versatility is consistency, and it's something that it's severely lacked because of all the pieces that it needs to see in order to get its consistency going, or to get itself having a really good fighting chance. With the Zanki build, it definitely has the strength of late game pressure, and I'm not sure how that will compare when you compare it to the Crest list Shiranui Oboro build, which will have that consistency of being able to superior stride gain 2 protect markers as opposed to the Zanki gaining a total of 0 protect markers. Shiranui Zanki definitely has the best late game pressure, being able to dominate on ride and stride. But because it is Shiranui Zanki, it doesn't have access to the History Collection Stride. That would give it the 2 protect markers, and that's going to probably be the biggest issue. It's going to be a lot more glass cannon, so it's going to be more offensive, but it could definitely be a lot more fragile as well, and that could go either way. This definitely is going to be the one that I am going to test out the most, since it's going to be the build that I'm not sure the most of, to be honest, at the moment. But as for the crest of this build, that one itself is potentially going to be the most consistent of all of them, because with the History Collection Stride, it will also have access to the 2 protect markers and being guaranteed a pretty good offensive push with that stride and being put at Generation Break 3. Only thing, it's not going to have that crest, so it will have to rely on its versatility to be able to kill the opponent. Will it work out? Only time will tell, but this is definitely a deck that I do want to mess around with, and it is going to be something very interesting to see how the other builds stack up, especially considering Fusen Kongo may be a potential frontrunner for our big next, well, finisher. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Really do appreciate it, and as always, I am Pump Squatch. Goodbye. This video is going to be long as heck. Bye-bye.